Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Feminine Force. Tonight we have, as well as the lovely Carolyn Murphy-Bennis, we have Yemi Penn on with us. And I had the pleasure of connecting with Yemi at a luncheon that I went to when I met Marianne Williamson. That was just an amazing opportunity. And Yemi and I connected after that, and she's agreed to come on and have a beautiful conversation with us. Yemi is a transformational coach and it talks about trauma. And I've just been so interested to hear how she frames our response to our own trauma. So thanks for joining us tonight, Yemi.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I love how everything aligned for me to be here. So an absolute pleasure and honor. And yeah, the way you just put that, I have a different alternative view to trauma. And I have to be honest, it's changing every single day because I'm actually doing a PhD in trauma. And every time I do some research, I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see where this conversation takes us and what you want to know.
Oh, Yemi, I absolutely delighted to have you here as well. And I'm just after listening to your TED talk, and it was just beautiful because Steph and Lisa were talking about how, you know the way, as you say, the understanding of trauma really, it unfolds and gets clearer and clearer in your mind all the time. The more that you work around this, the more you investigate and ask questions and meet people and talk, and all these conversations are opened up. And I absolutely love how you framed it as well, because your engineering background, and I was just saying I'm a designer, so designing background, so like it's like coming from that mindset where it's like logic as well as creativity and trying to solve a problem. For me, it's all about like, how do you solve a problem? I'm really interested in getting people into innovation and to bring out their different talents. But then I realized, to meet the moment that we're in, then I realized we can't do this because why? Because there's this trauma field that we're not speaking about, and that we have to open up first so we can, heal to be able to grow in our power. So I just absolutely love what you said in the TED talk and how you express that in your kind of engineering mindset, as well as
I think that's part of the secret. I think there's beauty in contrast for every single one of us. I mean, depending on what people listen to, but I came across the concept of contrast listening to Abraham Hicks, which was that I couldn't really experience joy unless I experienced the opposite. I am trying to figure out whether we do have to experience sadness to experience joy, but there's something sweet in that contrast. And the engineering brain versus this kind of personal development, transformation, shift of perspective has been mind-blowing. And I do have to say, a lot of my colleagues in engineering really look at me and think, what are you doing? Why are you talking about
I
trauma?
Know. Yes.
But I love it. I do love it.
Yeah, because it seems like they're two different words, but actually when you get closer and closer to understanding the issues, they come together, because
absolutely.
It's like you're kind of called to it because you have that understanding of how things can be re-engineered. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful.
So when you think about trauma or feel into trauma, what are some of the things, like right now, because you mentioned before that you even the way you're thinking about trauma is emerging, and I've noticed that because I feel like like I'm a big advocate for emotions and using emotions as a bridge for us to actually step into our true state. And the more I learn, the more I relate what I know to my own life, the more my understanding is emerging the whole time. So when you said, it's almost like I'm understanding it more or differently all the time, and almost reframing or expanding our version of what we know. So what is it that you know about trauma right now? Like, there's some, really juicy insights.
Yeah, so I can give you some stats, and I think this survey is quite old. So Boston University asked about 24 countries worldwide, just a range of participants, have you experienced trauma, which in simple terms is a distressing or disturbing event. 70% of those respondents said yes, they had experienced at least one traumatic event, and 30% of those had experienced 4 or more. Now, this was pre-pandemic, so you can only but imagine where the stats have gone. Here in Australia, where I am, and I know you probably have people listening around the world, Headspace says what they said. They said that 68% is what Australians have experienced trauma. So when you look at the stats, that's more than 1 in 2, meaning wherever you are, just split the room in half, something traumatic happened to them. So that I know for sure. The next thing I know for sure through my research is there's a thing called survivor's mission, which is what I think I'm going through, which is I experienced something traumatic. I need this traumatic experience to have deeper meaning than to label me as a victim. I find the term victim problematic, personally for me. I understand why some people need it because it's where you can herald help, but I don't like the fragility it then gives me as someone who is actually rising stronger. But survivor's mission is a big thing, and that definitely is what I know that I'm working on. And look, the fact that everybody responds differently. Intergenerational trauma is something we don't talk enough about. I think I struggle with the fact that we are putting people on the moon and we've got people talking about colonizing Mars, and yet no one is talking about the trauma that humans are going through and the fact that we still keep on having so much power to change the world. So as you can tell, I'm passionate about it. I know a lot, and I definitely want my research to bring it to the forefront as priority.
Amazing. I mean, and I was really interested what you were saying, especially from my background as well, working in corporate, about how you're working with in how it turns up in meetings, how it turns up in business, how it turns up, how you, I suppose, as it becomes clearer to you, more obvious. And I find that myself as well, even in education, because I'm a lecturer as well in design and communications, and seeing it with students, seeing where like there's this fabulous potential and creativity, and then there's this kind of shadow aspect that is holding a person back.
Yeah.
And it's like you're always that dance of both the potential and the shadow, the unintegrated experience, the unintegrated emotional experience, which is kind of blocking the flow of creativity. So I'm really passionate about it as well. And I think in industry, in business, it stops that kind of harmonious working of teams and in business. And I'd love you to talk a little bit about what you're seeing there and how that can change.
I mean, you use that language beautifully. There's the shadow aspect and potentiality. I mean, if you haven't written that down, please do, because there's some sort of formula attached to that. And naturally, my engineering brain goes to formula because it is. I think trauma kind of dampens and puts us in the dark, that it actually impacts our creativity, which is very much linked to potentiality. And in the workplace, exactly what I see. I just did a 5-week event for PwC. It was called the Corporate Coachella. They hired out the Hunter Valley for 8 weeks, but over 5 weeks, they had 3,000 of their middle staff go to immerse them in things that were outside of the office space. And in the conversations that I had across, say, 3,000 people, even though they didn't use the word, because I don't think that language is yet to be used in corporate, there were distressing events of many a kind that will blow people's minds. I was so grateful that firstly, I was able to create the safe space and then for them to trust me. But it's there and we're suppressing it. We're suppressing it because we feel we need to go to work with a different identity. And also that we still live in an era whereby you can't bring everything that happens at home to work, which is absolutely mad, because when you do the stats of anyone working 9 to 5, we spend more than 70% of our life in work, in the conventional, and to have to be somebody else for all that time when the real you is different, it's crazy. And then obviously being in a male dominated world, you can also see that men in particular, and there's data and there's studies to show this, they hold a lot of it in. So I've seen rage, and I didn't have the language back then, but I remember a guy slamming on the table, shouting at me. I remember looking at him and actually just seeing my then 5-year-old son. It was really bizarre. I literally just saw a 5-year-old boy and I was wondering why is he shouting? But now I know is that something had triggered him that took him straight back to the inner child.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about it like that in work, but I definitely see it.
Yeah.
And this, it amazes me that we even had this thought about ourselves that we can be two separate people. Like, I'm here. Wherever I go, I'm here. How can I, if I have an emotional situation at home or an emotional challenge at home, how can I just switch that off? It's not like I can leave Lisa at home and take another Lisa to work. Like, it's all connected. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, the way we think it's disconnected, it just doesn't make sense. It's not. It's all part of the same thing. It's all part of our life. We are here wherever we go.
Yeah, but you hit the nail on the head. It's disconnected. It's lack of that integration. We've just completely fragmented ourselves. Once again, theory, research. Oh my gosh, I'm going to sound like such a student over the next couple of years. It's split personality. Most of us are walking around with split personality, something that they used to put people in mental institutions for, as opposed to actually have a conversation with, well, how can we integrate you so that you can be the same person morning and night?
Yes. And in different groups with different people, you're not changing yourself to fit into your environment. Yeah. It's so it's so important. And I just, on the emotional side of things, we were talking about on Monday, we do a little talk together on Monday. We were discussing about, I suppose both my parents have passed away, and we're talking about the feeling and an emotion of this burning. And I was talking about when I was a child in the countryside that they used to burn the mountains, and I got very worried about this. I was like, why are you doing that? But I was taught like that the burning brings back the regrowth. And Lisa was saying about the bushfires as well. They do that for the regrowth for the next year. And we were saying it's like the emotions, but you have to sit in the moment and sit in the burning of the discomfort to get to the other side. And that's what I feel. I've heard you say something along that lines in your talk as well, which was great, to sitting in the discomfort. I think it's really, really important. I love the way you highlighted that.
And even as you say that, I'm sitting there thinking, but I don't want it. I'm the kind of person that if I'm wearing shoes that are too tight, I can't wait to fling that shoe off. I mean, even when I get home, I can't wait to take the bra off. I just feel like it's a chasm on my chest. So I don't like it. And I guess I want to show empathy for those who think, well, why would I need to sit in it? But it's part of the refining process. I think there are boundaries. Like I remember someone asking me, but how far do you stretch? We don't want to break, but we do want to be refined. We do want to grow. I love the story of the lobster. Is it lobster or one of the sea animals, which its shell has to break because the skin keeps on growing, and then it creates a whole new shell. You see, I'm okay with that if there's something at the end, but it's part of the process. And what I love is these traditional modalities. It's the second part of my research, which is what role do traditional cultures play in the resolution of trauma. I think we've forgotten a lot of things. I think there's way more than the meditation, the Reikis of the world. I think there's more we can tap into. I do think Indigenous cultures around the world are probably a bit worried that we take away the sacredness, and because human nature is to, commodify everything, commercialize. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in ancient knowledge. And so I love that you've gone back to your roots as well and remembered those stories of burn-ins. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that as well. I'm just having a conversation with my brother at the weekend that, the essence of Celtic spirituality has been really, it's been covered over. And I suppose the understanding of the wisdom tradition has really not really been, it's like as if it has to be rejuvenated. And that's why I was trying to bring it back to life, because it marries up with all of it, the wisdom traditions of the world and, the ancient cultures. And it's just, that's what we need now. We need to revitalize that, bring all that back, because they're timeless traditions that help us today in our modern world. When things are changing so rapidly, we need to hold on to what is timeless, and the next generation flourish.
I held an elder say, let's go back to the future. Remember that movie we watched back in the day? Let's go back to the future, but ancient modalities. So yes, I'm with you.
I think that is also because I'm really into practical. I know that the New Age movement has been really important to get us to where we are. But I feel that the next part of our evolution is emotional, because we have to be able to embody what we know. We have to be able to integrate. And that is really practical. So when I hear you talk about ancient traditions, I also think around values, like the fables that we used to tell children that actually had a meaning and a message. And it's almost like we've thrown out so much stuff, and we've thrown out all this good stuff as well, because often the values are what hold us accountable in our everyday life. It's like if I want to change my behavior, it's my value of freedom and self-love that actually hold me accountable to myself. Very practical.
Yeah. So there are two things that you said, emotions and values, but I'll come back to emotions. The values, I remember when the 2020, saga kicked off and there was all of this polarity. I just went to values. I kept on asking myself, what is Australia's value? What is the world's value? And I started to think, what body brings all the countries together so we could figure out? Then I thought United Nations, surely that's where all the G6 or G9 summits go on. I mean, wouldn't it be great if every country just said, why don't we all just have one uniform value, whether it's peace, whether it's love, and they defined what it should. I'd never thought of it. I thought of the values, but just the fact that you said, why don't we go back to that? Surely I wouldn't have to wake up to news articles on China being upset with Australia or, what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. And sometimes I feel silly for saying it, but my goodness, surely we can all just get a value. Emotions, I just want to very quickly say this. I know emotions can be quite somatic with the body kind of being, I guess, as Bessel van der Kolk says, the body keeps the score. The body can tell us a lot of what's happening. I've just come back from a conference in Melbourne. It was the International Childhood Trauma Conference, where a lot of the big speakers, researchers worldwide come. And we had a gentleman, Lou Cozzolino, I'm hoping I said his surname right. He speaks about anger as an emotion, saying it is so valid, because I started to wrong myself for anger. And he said, don't confuse anger with rage. Rage is when you completely lose the person, and this is when they start to harm themselves and others. And it felt really relaxing to hear that, because it's a form of release. And I've further found out today that, shame can be one of the lowest emotion forms, and that you're actually advised to be angry before you feel shame. And that should put it into context, because a lot of us are feeling shame. We shouldn't be ashamed of these emotions, but wouldn't it be good for us to know a bit more about it? So, yeah, hands up to talking about emotions and value.
That's amazing, actually, because our talk on Monday is about positive anger, because we were talking about that, that to teach people that, because, as children, we've been taught to suppress our emotions, suppress everything. And then when it comes to feeling that guilt of having that emotion of anger, but actually it's like the fuel that I know for creativity. For me, when I see something that's like an unjust in the world, there's a kind of there's a feeling of it's like it's the fuel for my creativity. I feel that positive anger. I want to do something, so then I create something. It pushes me to the next level of creation, to use everything that I have in my my skills and my talents to meet the moment, so it's like so valuable that to unleash that positive anger, I think, into action, like into positive action.
Imagine if everyone had access to that. What is it you love doing? Okay, the next time you find yourself in this emotion you don't really like, how about you use it as fuel to create something positive? That'd be great.
I think it's just a mindset shift, isn't it? Like, so for me, the emotion that I feel like in this moment, if I'm at ease, or if I'm allowing of everything I feel in this moment, then I'm in this moment fully, which means I can move into the next moment. If I'm in this moment, but there are parts of me that I'm suppressing or denying or resisting, like parts that I feel that I don't like or don't want to feel, then I'm not in this moment, which means I can't emerge into the next moment, because I'm actually not in this moment. I'm actually just in a recycle, because I won't allow myself to be fully in this moment and feel everything that's in this moment. So for me, my embrace of everything, like even the discomfort, allows me to emerge into the next moment, which is often where I find the solution for my discomfort.
Yeah, that's powerful. Can you, I hope there's a replay on this for people, because if your solution is in the moment after that major discomfort, my goodness, you'd stay there, wouldn't you? You'd stay there just a bit longer to get that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I fully believe that's the case. It's just that we have been so programmed to not be at ease with the way we feel. And I think that is, for me, that's emotion education. Like, that's what we should be teaching at schools, right? Like, this is how you can actually sit with your feelings.
And I think it's okay for us to, I know unlearning stuff is becoming a buzzword, to unlearn stuff. I've just announced my new positioning, because I kind of just do whatever I want, and I think some people need a name for it. And so rebellious curiosity is my positioning. And I think, what was it? I just obviously, because I'm really sad with Olivia Newton-John passing, and it took me back to the movies. And so I went and I watched Grease just because I wanted to be reminded. And I'm watching it with new eyes thinking, oh my God, I can't believe people were allowed to say that or do that. Because that really goes against the grain. But I'm still looking there thinking, but this is compassion, because when we know better, we do better.
Yes.
Back then they thought it was okay to say that. And this is why I struggle with this cancel culture as well. I mean, we're going to finish the whole human race, in my view, if we continue to do that, because hopefully we won't be making films that say things and do things the way it was. But we have to learn. We have to learn to unlearn things, and in most cases forgive the past. I know forgiveness is a big deal, but I think it's part of the healing of trauma, personally.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. Yeah, integrating, because even like I was sharing with Lisa as well, but you know, when both my parents passed away in the last 13 months, and it's like the process of grieving is very much the integration. So you're holding on to, you know, the legacy of the, you know, the beautiful, I suppose, inheritance that you've gotten from like their strength in their life and what they achieved, what they overcome, and everything like that. And then there's the other side that maybe was, you know, carried on, their trauma that was carried on, that was, you know, projected onto you. And you have to integrate both of those, you know, and it's a difficult, because, you know, especially when you love somebody and then you know they love them, but there's also things that were difficult as well, you know, that you have to try and understand, and understanding is the only way forward for that, to understand the whole picture together as one, to be able to have the mind of being able to see that paradigm, you know, the two paradigms, the two polarities, we'll say, and hold them in one, you know, embrace them in one and move forward. You know, it quickens the process, I think, when we can do that, you know, and I think that's really on a collective level what we need to do, you know, and to be trying to train people to do that, because we can be stuck there for years like that, you know.
My strategist was trying to get me to include grief to trauma, and my inner being says it is part of it, but I do think it's an extension of some sort. It is different, and I'm sorry for your loss, because you know, my father passed away 4 years ago, and I'm still having conversations with him on some level, but still longing for him. So I'm finding grief to be a really interesting thing that I definitely don't think I've got the bandwidth within my study. But yeah, definitely needs to be acknowledged as definite trauma.
Oh, absolutely. Because I've seen what other people they have in my family, whatever, over the last couple of years, deal with it in a completely different way, and it being very destructive. So it definitely is it's just not seen as a trauma, which I think it can, you know, it's just, it can help you grow, or it can, you know, destroy you, like any trauma, you know, kind of thing. So understanding so important.
So Yemi, we're just going to wind this up pretty soon, but I wondered if you could just give us a little taste of what is it that when you finish doing your PhD, you hope to be able to share with the world, like just as a final statement. Go out with a bang.
It's such a juicy question. I have my whole body tingling. I love that because it just allows me to put things out into the ether. Look, I have been thinking about this, but I do think the PhD possibly will be the prerequisite. Just rolling off my tongue. I want to be the Yemi Penn to the David Attenborough. So David Attenborough talks about our planet and sustainability of the planet. And I've noticed in his recent documentaries, he does acknowledge that, you know, it's going to be quite difficult to sustain the planet if we've got such disparities across the world. I want to talk about sustainability of humanity. So my dream and vision is to roll out and partner up either with the Netflixes or the SBSs of the world. And those conversations have started to say, can we start having a conversation, uncomfortable conversations about sustainability of the planet? Because the humans you are asking, who are the custodians of this planet, are a little bit lost. We're a little bit misplaced. And I know we're talking about mental health, and I'm not going to get this right. I don't know whether those are just the symptoms, but the underlying trauma is huge. And it's a big ask because it means we're trying to have a paradigm shift. And that's bold, but that's what really is what I want to do. And then naturally, there's so many other things. I mean, the dream is to open retreats around the world, either as a franchise, which is the equivalent of, say, an Alcoholics Anonymous, but for trauma. Someone thinks they went through something traumatic and they're able to go in. You know, when I was practicing my TED talk, you know, it starts off cheekily with, my trauma is bigger than yours. And my son comes up to me, who's 6 years old, saying, no, my trauma is bigger because I fell down and I hurt my knee. You know, we might think something like that is so inconsiderable, but you never know. And I think that's what is to create the space. Someone said today, I had another podcast interview, that having an empathetic witness around the timing of a traumatic event can considerably reduce the impact of that trauma. And that's what I'd love to do in centers around the world. I could keep going, but those are the two juiciest ones that I could share.
Beautiful.
That's amazing. What a beautiful vision to have that. Wow.
Gorgeous.
Very beautiful.
Yeah. Amazing work you're doing, Yemi.
So amazing, Yemi. Thank you so much for sharing. It's just so inspiring. I feel like, it's ignited. It's just fantastic. It's been a really beautiful conversation. And I look forward to sort of watching how it all emerges for you. And you know, for all of us, really, I suppose, doing this work right now on the planet, because it seems like we have a conversation together and more comes of it. So
absolutely. And look, I would love to come back in, you know, whether it's a couple of months, years, to keep sharing some of the output of my PhD, but also want to thank you both for the work you do. You know, I started a podcast and a bit of a YouTube channel, and it takes time. This is love. This is work. We give people a different perspective. You're taking the knowledge out of your time to share with others, and it's not lost on me. So I really appreciate you both for the invitation.
Oh, you're very welcome, Yemi. And I just ask everyone to watch your TED Talk as well. So it's so inspiring, you know, amazing. Yeah, I think people definitely gain from that and grow from that, what you've shared there too.
Absolutely. There's a link in the bottom of this post you'll find to Yemi Penn's website, where you can find her TED Talk and also some information about her documentary. So there's a lot of stuff happening there. I looked at it. It looks great, Yemi. So thanks again for coming on and sharing your time. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.
Thank you all. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.